witnesses, and I guess I'll start off. Start off with Mr. Blackledge. You referenced the National Small Business Summit. Could you elaborate on that, and is there any precedence for that before?
Yes, actually, there have been 3 small business summits. They were called White House conferences on small business in the past, the last one being in 1995. But it has been 14 years now since that last summit, and a lot has changed for the world of small business in that time. The tax code has changed, the regulatory environment has changed, and what's particularly important right now is that the world of the economy has changed with the result of our current recession. Businesses are being dramatically impacted by the recession. Many of them are failing, and there are many things that government could do and has been trying to do to help small businesses. But at the moment, it's flying blind because it doesn't really understand what's actually happening in the small business community and isn't getting as much input directly from small businesses as it could. That would be the purpose of a White House Small Business Summit on economic recovery, would be to let small businesses actually, just as we are today, talk to the Congress, talk to the administration, talk to federal administrators and the agencies about what needs to be done to help small business. It would allow the Congress to spend the money that it spends to assist small business more wisely, and would also certainly improve the small business economy.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, your organization represents, millions of home-based businesses. In your view, why could you elaborate a little bit more? You testified somewhat on it already, but why they're not taking this home office deduction? How complicated is that really?
I think it's very complicated. Again, the form itself has, I think I mentioned in my testimony, has C instructions 14 different times. There's a publication 957, that is designed to help complete one form. So there's an entire publication that you can read. I think the publication is 57 pages. That 57 pages goes along with the one-page form. So I think it's very complicated. I think there's also this fear of the IRS that I talked about as well. There's this, I heard at the library or heard over the water cooler that if I take the home office deduction, there's a better chance that I'm going to get audited. So it's that fear of not putting the right thing on the right line that just becomes more and more cumbersome, and they choose to just forego the deduction. And I think that clearly is not what the intent of the Internal Revenue Code was for, nor was that deduction to discourage taking that deduction. It was designed to recognize their facilities expenses there at their house and should be recognized on their tax return. And I think that's the best thing about the standard deduction. Let the scoring work out so that it can be revenue neutral. If $1,500 is not the right number, $1,400 might be the right number, but whatever number should recognize the cost of operating a business out of that office in the home, there ought to be a deduction for that.
So Congressman McHugh and I have introduced that Simplification Act, H.R. 1509. Would you hazard a guess as to how many more small businesses might take advantage of the home office deduction if that bill's enacted?
Well, it'd be difficult to say, but depending on which paper you read, there are 20 million small businesses out there. I think the IRS estimates that there'll be 23 million tax returns with a Schedule C attached to it. If only 7% of those, which is what the NASE survey indicates, only a fourth of those people actually take the home office deduction. Just using those numbers there, that's another 15 million small businesses owners out there that would benefit from that bill and that standard deduction.
I appreciate the comments on the tax neutrality, too. That's very, very good. Ms. Ryan, Chin Ryan, I'll get it correctly. Sorry, Christine. The tax code is pretty darn complex, and you alluded to having professionals prepare tax returns. A lot of small business folks can hardly do that on their own. What's been your experience since you've been in business, starting and now at this point in time, and where do you think we need to be heading for many small businessmen and women?
Well, when I first started, I knew infrastructure was very important, so I hired a consultant to help me with my financials, and so that has enabled me to set everything in place that I currently use now. I used to be an 8A firm and through SBA, so I had 4 different entities to account for my accounting system, not only through the SBA but also through the IRS and federal government contracts. There's some allowable and unallowable costs, and then my banks for a credit line, which was required for an 8A firm for my 8A application. Is when I get a contract, how will I be able to meet payroll and expenses before I get my first payment? So I had all these different entities to report to, especially in the federal government, what's not, allowed as expenses and not. So I pretty much had to have the infrastructure, so I hired a consultant, and through the SBA also, they've had consultants to help me. So fortunately, I had help, and I had the vision to know that infrastructure is very important. But it does cost me. I, at one point, had 31 employees in the 1990s through the tech boom, and I needed that infrastructure. So I've also been audited by the IRS because they thought I was a professional, services corporation, therefore a higher tax bracket that passed with flying colors. I've been audited by the federal government internal audit groups, passed with flying colors. So fortunately, I've have no issues. Every penny's accounted for. But as chair of the Governor Small Business Council and the Oregon Small Business Responsible Leadership, many small businesses around the state do not have the advantages I did, do not really understand that infrastructure is very important. I've had friends who started businesses that really couldn't even go to the banks for loans because their financial were not in order. And it's because a lot of them really didn't, graduate with an MBA. They're entrepreneurs. They had the creativity. They were either technical folks that started a business. And like many of us, we learned the hard way, and we then, of course, like what you hear a lot, we started, loaning ourselves money to start the business. So I think that's the majority of small businesses out there, even though it's improved. There's a lot, at least in Oregon, there's a lot of, free consultations, so very inexpensive through the SBDCs and through the targeted service providers and so on in the community colleges. But there's still a lot out there that do not know these services are available and do start off on a shoestring. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was one of those 30 years ago when I did my own taxes and started my own business because I felt I could do that. I hazard to guess as a budding veterinarian coming out of veterinary college right now, I would not be starting my own business in large part because of some of the rules and regulations we now have upon us that are so onerous. Well, I'm going to switch over to Ranking Member Buchanan and let him ask some questions.